As Delhi government's EV policy completes 2 years, we do a status check of how EV adoption has taken place across the country. Delhi leads the way in EV adoption compared to other states. The city has 1.6 lakh registered EVs with 62,000 registered in the last 2 years alone. So how do the numbers really stack up? Well, we have taken out the data and Delhi's EV penetration is 10%, which is higher than states. Karnataka is at 5.7, Maharashtra would be 5.1, UP would be at 4.6, Tamil Nadu would be 3.6%. So when it comes to EV adoption, Delhi is the highest. Now, when you compare it to the national picture, out of 1 crore, 18 lakh vehicles registered till August 2022, 5,21,477 were electric vehicles. So the national average is 4.4% EV penetration. So Delhi's EV penetration at 10 or 12% is higher than the national average. So how does the capital really stand out? 1.6 lakh electric vehicles registered as of July 2022, 62,000 registered in the last 2 years alone. So the EV adoption has really picked up in the last 2 years. There is a dense penetration of charging points as well. 2,452 charging points across the city, 235 battery swapping stations as well. Let's get you more numbers. At least 100 crores has been rolled out as incentives, demand incentives to over 36,000 consumers in the national capital. 152 buses. There is a big focus on public transport. 152 buses, or 24% of the new bus fleet, is already electric. 148 additional e-buses to be inducted in the Delhi bus fleet by September 2022. And 1,500 buses are being procured through a grand challenge, and they will be procured by CESL from December onwards. They will be across Delhi. What is going to be the strategy ahead for the national capital? Well, the Delhi government will be soon launching a 3-year unified action plan. They will be installing an additional 18,000 charging points by 2024. There will be a big focus on having charging points for every 15 EVs by 2024. So there will be a focus on swapping and also for aligning incentives to charging solutions for priority vehicle segments such as two-wheelers and three-wheelers. They will also like to operationalize incentives in the EV policy for battery swapping facility operators as well. When it comes to parkings, they would like to make parkings EV ready. 20% space in new buildings, 5% space in existing buildings must have at least 3.3 kilowatt output charging points as well. So there's a lot that Delhi is doing. Clearly, Delhi leading the charge and giving us some examples of how an EV policy can be successful as well. I spoke to Kailash Gahlot, Delhi's Transport Minister, on 2 years of the Delhi EV policy, what has really worked and the roadmap ahead. Let's take a look.
I think the most important thing which we did was the consultation part. We took a lot of pains while framing the policy, while drafting the policy. I don't think we left any segment untouched, whether it is manufacturers, whether professionals, whether the end users. And I think that is what actually has worked. In fact, we were going through the last 2 years, and our office people, they have categorized the entire, what you're talking about, the success, under 3 I's. So we are saying I3. So the first I, we are saying incentives. How we created the demand by giving different kind of incentives, whether cash incentive or let's say that the road tax and the registration fee was waived off for electric vehicles. And the second I, we said innovation. Let's say while giving out subsidy, we created a seamless and effortless process, how the subsidy goes into the account of the purchaser. And the third I, which I would mention, is the inclusion. We did not leave any segment, whether it is two-wheeler, four-wheeler, autos, public transport, and Delhi government buses. So I think that is what actually worked for Delhi government.
Right. So as of now, the EV adoption is at 10%. In March, it was 12.5%. you have a target of achieving 25% EV registrations by 2024. How soon will you be able to achieve that target, and what's the kind of growth that you expect in the EV segment in New Delhi next year?
No, I think I must thank Delhiites for adopting this new technology. तो एक बात तो साफ है कि दिल्ली के जो लोग हैं उन्होंने इस टेक्नोलॉजी को अडॉप्ट करना स्टार्ट कर दिया है. I think it is very difficult initially to convince people because new technology, there are a lot of apprehensions in their minds, and the momentum is there now, and I think quite confident that we'll be able to achieve. I think you'll have to give us some leverage because we lost 2 years during the corona, but I think we'll be able to achieve that 25% target. We are already on around 12.5. So I think we'll be able to achieve that.
Okay, if I ask you for a comparison to other metros, other states, what has worked for Delhi? How did you try and tailor your incentives, your rollouts, your coordination mechanisms in order to make sure that the policy succeeds on the ground? And how much of this is coming from two-wheelers, e-rickshaws, cars?
So I think when you talk about collaboration, across different departments, whether it is including discoms and other stakeholders, a perfect example of collaborative effort. I think the credit goes, as I said in the morning also, the real credit goes to Delhiites for adopting. The credit goes to the entire Delhi government, the transport department, to DDC. We have the institutes like RMI, many other organizations who gave us inputs, and whatever bottlenecks were there, we kept removing them. So one part was the drafting of the policy, notifying it, but I think we worked harder and we took a lot of pains in seeing that this policy does not remain on paper. And we, on the grassroots, we whatever difficulties and problems were there, we kept removing them.
Right. So I would also like to ask you about the roadmap ahead. 1.6 lakhs EVs registered till now, 62,000 electric vehicles registered in the last 2 years alone. There are about 2,500 public and semi-public chargers, 235 odd battery swapping stations. What would be the next milestone for Delhi's EV policy?
No, the first milestone, as you mentioned, is the 25% target. And I think the second, the most important target is of creating a good infrastructure of network of charging stations. Already more than 2,000 charging points we already have. I think just 2 weeks back, Honorable CM also inaugurated 7 charging stations, having around, I think, 45 to 50 charging points. Similarly, Delhi government is, I think, in a very efficient way. I think 100 charging stations are being created. We have a target of creating a good network of making available 1 charging point in a radius of 3 kilometers. I think we will be able to achieve that also.
I also read you've come out with an action plan today, the Delhi government action plan for the next 3 years, which also has a unified action plan, a roadmap for setting up chargers. How many more chargers would you like to set up in the next 3 to 4 years?
I think we will be able to set up almost 300 charging stations. So each station will have multiple charging points. And that is the target. So our goal is to provide 1 charging point to every person in a radius of 3 kilometers.
All right. When it comes to EV adoption, what according to you is still holding back the sale of electric vehicles in India? And I'm asking you because Delhi has had several campaigns, awareness campaigns to make people aware about electric vehicles. You've had a very wide roundup of incentives for two-wheelers, for scrapping, for last mile mobility, even for passenger cars. So what, according to you, may still be holding back EV adoption, a piece of the puzzle that we have to work on for future?
So I think I talked about this in the morning also. I think the most crucial part is the range. अगर सपोज किसी के पास एक ही गाड़ी कार है और उसको अगर दिल्ली से बाहर जाना है तो व्हाट डज ही डू? बिग क्वेश्चन मार्क. आई थिंक दैट इज व्हाट प्रॉब्ली लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर नॉट adopting electric vehicles because of the range issue, because of the charging points or charging stations, let's say along the highways or outside Delhi. I think any middle class person would have one car. So if he wants to convert to electric vehicle, then there's a big question mark. What if he has to travel to Meerut? What if he has to travel to Haridwar? Or if he has to travel to Chandigarh? I think the range issue must be addressed by the manufacturers. A comfortable range solution should be provided by the manufacturers. And I think the other part would be the cost. I think still the cost of the electric vehicles is slightly on the higher side. I think but I'm sure as the technology matures, I think both the issues will be addressed.
Right. We've also seen a number of EV fires in the last couple of months, in two-wheelers, in cars as well. Do you feel that has somehow shaken the sentiment of some prospective buyers? Did somewhere you feel like going back to the table, asking your team to maybe do a review of how the incentives are being given out, whether there need to be greater checks and balances about who we are giving subsidies to?
देखिए, जब भी कोई नई टेक्नोलॉजी आती है, these things do happen. If you remember when CNG was introduced, I think there were similar incidents. I am not saying that these incidents should happen, but for any technology, it takes time to mature. I am 100% sure the manufacturers, the scientists, the experts, the person who are dealing with this technology, they must be brainstorming that what was the cause of the fire. Was it a simple short circuit, or there was some manufacturing defect in the battery? I am pretty confident that the industry will address these issues, but I don't think people will get perturbed or they will be shaken by these incidents, because I think these incidents do happen. But at the same time, and as Delhi government, as a transport minister, we are also, I think at every fire which is taking place, I have told the department, please examine what was the cause.
But any tweaks in the policy as a result of these fires, just to see what is the R&D background of these companies, what is the extent of localization, who are their suppliers?
No, as of now, we are not tweaking the policy. I think we'll wait. The central government is also, I think, working on it. We'll wait for some kind of report which comes out. Post that, we will take some action.
I was looking at your status report that you had shared today with the public, and that said 94 crores has been rolled out as incentives to over 36,000 consumers. I'm guessing this is on the demand incentives, maybe separate from what has been given out as incentives for charging stations. Could you give us a total of how much money has been spent by the Delhi government on promoting electric vehicles, on incentives for consumers, and also for setting up charging stations?
I won't be having the correct data on the charging stations, but more than 100 crores has been given out as a demand incentive.
Okay. More than 100 crores has been given out. And how much more is likely to be spent over the next 3 to 4 years? Would you also look at possibly increasing the allocation for electric vehicles or subsidy support for electric vehicles?
I think sufficient subsidy is being given, and eventually I think to create a demand to push the subsidies are good, but eventually, as I mentioned earlier also, eventually the electric vehicle has to be within the reach of, if I say, a common man, aam aadmi. So that will drive the entire industry in a sustainable way. Subsidies eventually, I think, beyond a point, may not be very healthy, and I don't think we need to further increase, but we will keep the subsidy part till the entire industry matures and there is a good demand of the vehicles.
Right. Will there be any kind of refocus or repurposing or restructuring of subsidies to possibly focus on certain vehicle segments rather than all of them together?
See, our focus, so when we talk about the pollution part, the more than the four-wheelers, the pollution is, I think, contributed by two-wheelers. And if you see our subsidy part also, initially the first 1,000 four-wheelers had a subsidy. At the moment, that 1,000 vehicle part subsidy is over. But we have kept the subsidy going on for two-wheelers, for e-rickshaw. So that is the primary target.
Right, two-wheelers and e-rickshaws. By when do you think the industry would be mature enough to do without subsidies? And I'm asking you because in 2024, the FAME 2 subsidies will expire. We will have to start thinking about FAME 3. Delhi government has a EV policy. There are certain subsidies which have been mentioned for a certain period. By when do you think we will have to start tapering down these subsidies?
That's a very difficult question. But I think when you talk about FAME 3, I think there should be a lot of focus on public transport. Because let's say in the FAME 2 we got some subsidies on electric buses which we are introducing. Delhi government has its own subsidy program for induction of electric buses. But I think if central government focuses on public transport, I think it will go a long way.
Right. The Delhi government's EV policy and subsidy support complements that of what is coming through the FAME subsidies. They have a FAME subsidy for public transport, for two-wheelers, for three-wheelers. Give us a sense of how the collaboration between states and the center can be improved. What kind of policy clarity or regulatory interventions can be made by the center in order to increase the adoption of electric vehicle across segments?
I think you've asked a very important question. So, at various forums and discussions, more often this question has been asked कि DTC जो है वो घाटे में जा रही है. DTC is in losses. तो मेरा जवाब हमेशा ये रहा है कि DTC या public transport, you don't intend to earn profits out of it. ये पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट में स्टेट को हमेशा इन्वेस्ट करना है. स्टेट हैज़ टू इन्वेस्ट ऑन पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट इफ वी वांट टू एनकरेज पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट. आई वोंट बी रॉन्ग, इन फेम 2 में कितने सारे स्टेट्स ने इलेक्ट्रिक बसेस लिया? हार्डली, आई थिंक.
It did not take off.
It did not take off. So that is what exactly I am saying. FAME 3 should focus on creating an environment whereby all the states, Delhi got around 300 buses in FAME 2. So we have procured all those 300 buses. Under the Grand Challenge part, I think Delhi got around 900 buses. We took another 600 buses and we have already placed order for 1,500 electric buses. The delivery would start from this year end. So I think the center must work with all the states. पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट की जो हालत है और स्टेट्स में वो बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छी नहीं है. lot of states, I think the public transport is in financial crisis. So I think all the states, they should get together, discuss with the center. They must also see how electric buses can be inducted in other states also. That is what would matter.
Right. What, according to you, despite the incentives, despite EESL, CESL tenders, why was the induction of electric buses in public transport in different states very, very slow to take off? What, according to you, were some of the issues in the last 2 to 3 years, which must be ironed out?
So I think the first part is the political commitment, that the political executive must be convinced and there should be absolute clarity that they want to induct, because it is not just a simple induction of one bus. You have to create the entire environment. For example, when we started talking about induction of electric buses, the most important point was to electrify the depot. Over the last 2 years, we have worked really hard, and we are in the process of electrifying all our depots. I think 12, 13 depots we have already electrified, 55, another 55 depots are in the pipeline. But for electrifying one single depot, it is a process of almost 1.5 years, which I also never realized. मुझे नहीं मालूम था कि आज से पहले हम सोचते थे कि इलेक्ट्रिक डिपो क्रिएट करना है तो डिस्कॉम को बोलना है कि सिर्फ जाके इसको चार्जिंग लगा दीजिए, लेकिन एक डिपो को इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन के लिए पहले आप डिस्कॉम जो पावर सप्लाई कर रहा है उसको बुलाएंगे, उसको बोलेंगे प्लीज़ सी कि ये फिजिबल है या नहीं है, आपका ग्रिड कहाँ पर है, उसके बाद फिर कितने किलोमीटर वो पावर केबल पूरा सड़क खोद के उसको डालना है, उसके रेस्टोरेशन चार्जेस. आई स्टिल रिमेंबर फॉर क्रिएटिंग इलेक्ट्रिक डिपो एट रोहिणी, वी स्पेंड मोर देन 100 crores. It's not a small amount. So that is why I am saying the first and foremost is the commitment of the political executive, the political setup. For example, when I had a word with Honorable CM Arvind Kejriwal, कि सर हमें इलेक्ट्रिक बसेस इंडक्ट करनी है, आपसे डिस्कस हुआ था, एंड वी नीड एक्स्ट्रा फंड. इनफैक्ट व्हेन दिस मैटर केम अप इन द कैबिनेट, जो तो ऑलमोस्ट 500 करोड़ रुपए था उसका इलेक्ट्रिक फॉर टू इलेक्ट्रीफाई द डिपोज. सो उसमें हुआ कि ये तो बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा है. आई सेड सर दिस इज द स्टार्टिंग, वी नीड दिस फंड्स टू सो दैट वी कैन स्टार्ट इलेक्ट्रीफाइंग द डिपोज. बिकॉज अगर हम 1.5 साल पहले डिपोज का इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन स्टार्ट नहीं करते तो 300 बसेज जो अभी इंडक्ट हो रही हैं ये भी इंडक्ट नहीं होती. सो इट इज़ अ फुल, आई थिंक the entire ecosystem, the entire environment has to be created if we have to induct electric buses.
So 24% of your new bus fleet is electric right now. By when do you think you will be able to convert Delhi's entire fleet of buses to electric?
So I think we have set up a very aggressive target again, that by I think 2025, our 75% of the fleet would be electric.
Okay, and when it comes to cab aggregators, how important is that when it comes to EV adoption?
So we have again set up a very aggressive target. The cab aggregators may not be very happy with us, but when we talk about the larger picture, I'm forgetting the exact targets. I think it is 25% of the fleet by I think next 1 year. I'm not remembering the exact, and I think maybe another 2-3 years, 50% of the fleet would have to be electric.
Right. Now coming to my final set of questions, Mr. Gehlot, give us a sense, if we were to ask you that today we're talking about milestones achieved over 2 years with the EV policy, where would you like Delhi's EV ecosystem to be in the next 2 years?
So
if you can share some numbers that you have in mind, some about the number of two-wheelers on the roads, number of buses on the road, number of three-wheelers, cars.
So if you ask my personal wish, my dream would be that any vehicle which I see on Delhi roads should be electric. So we have a population of, I think, maybe more than 1 crore vehicles. And if you talk about the active, maybe around 80 lakh vehicles on Delhi roads. So that is my dream, that every vehicle which I see, every four-wheeler, every two-wheeler, every bus, any other, in fact, I would say why not the commercial vehicles also, maybe trucks. I think I'll be the happiest person and the happiest Transport Minister also. And as Honorable CM has always said that we will go on inducting electric buses henceforth. We will keep pushing the sale of electric vehicles. I think it will be very difficult to quantify in numbers, but I think if we are to achieve that 25% target, I think that will be very satisfying.